I think that what this Department of Justice has been doing under Pam Bondi has been disgraceful. Pretending that they're ending weaponization by weaponizing. The definition of weaponization to them is anyone they like getting indicted. But when they then indict someone, regardless of the evidence, it's not weaponization, it's justice. Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, has been testifying in front of a Senate committee, and it's gotten heated, not surprisingly. I've said this before. One of the things I really like about doing this show is when I don't get to listen to some of what's happened during the day, I get to listen to it with all of you. And that's what we're going to do today. I'm going to play back various interchanges with Pam Bondi and members of the Senate, and then I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to comment on it, and then I'm going to take your calls. I specifically didn't want to guest today because I wanted to make sure we had enough time to go through what actually happened today. So let's start with an opening statement from Senator Dick Durbin, the Democrat from Illinois, and he is summarizing his displeasure with Pam Bondi. This is number 2.
Our fellow Americans are not the enemy. It is abhorrent for the president, who is supposed to represent all Americans regardless of political party, to describe anyone who disagrees with him in this manner. To my Republican colleagues who claim the previous administration weaponized the Department of Justice, President Biden retained President Trump's FBI Director Christopher Wray, who President Trump then fired. President Biden never directed the Attorney General to prosecute his political opponents. President Biden never fired his own political appointees for refusing to prosecute his targets. What has taken place since January 20th, 2025 would make even President Nixon recoil. This is your legacy, Attorney General Bondi. In 8 short months, you have fundamentally transformed the Justice Department and left an enormous stain in American history.
I got to say, I kind of agree with Senator Durbin on this. I think that what this Department of Justice has been doing under Pam Bondi has been disgraceful. Pretending that they're ending weaponization by weaponizing, right? The definition of weaponization to them is anyone they like getting indicted. But when they then indict someone, regardless of the evidence, it's not weaponization, it's justice. And that's where it's very hard to respond when you make the words not mean anything, right? Oh, both sides are engaging in weaponization. No, it's actually not true. It's not true. When it comes to the DOJ, Durbin's right here. Biden let them investigate his son. They let him prosecute his son. Yeah, he gave him a pardon at the end. There's no way Trump would let the DOJ investigate and prosecute his son. Are you kidding? So if you think about it through that prism, it's clear Biden wasn't directing the Department of Justice. But Pam Bondi keeps insisting that this is the end of weaponization. This is number 4. This is in her opening statement.
As to ending the weaponization of justice, we learned that former FBI secretly investigated you and your colleagues. Why? They wanted to take President Trump off the playing field. They were playing politics with law enforcement powers and will go down as a historic betrayal of public trust. This is the kind of conduct that shatters the American people's faith in our law enforcement system. We will work to earn that back every single day. We are returning to our core mission of fighting real crime. While there is more work to do, I believe in 8 short months, we have made tremendous progress towards those ends. Our federal surges in Washington, D.C. and Memphis are a perfect example of how the Department of Justice should operate.
That's a lot of BS, all right? Let's be clear, first of all, on what happened, because there's a lot of misinformation already going on about what happened with these Republican senators. The FBI in 2023 analyzed phone records of more than half a dozen Republican lawmakers as part of the investigation into Trump's effort to overturn the election. Here's the key point. The records enabled investigators to see basic information about the date and time of the calls, but not the content of the communications. The data encompassed several days during the week of January 6th, when, of course, the rioters stormed the Capitol. And apparently, this was an effort to create a timeline. Now, the person's name, the FBI agent's name, was redacted. Someone at the FBI got fired today over it. But let's not pretend as if, oh, this shows you again they were out to get the Republicans. It's not about the Republicans, it's about what's the evidence. There was enormous evidence about January 6th. Now, I previously said when Merrick Garland had decided not to prosecute Trump for January 6th in 2021, I agreed with that decision, even though I thought there was a case that could be made against Trump. Jack Smith later made that case once the documents case happened, once a special counsel was appointed. And this shows you the independence that the special counsel had. Garland wasn't going to prosecute. How do we know? Because he could have, and he didn't. And if he was trying to bring down Trump, the way to do it would be to do it as early as possible. He didn't do it. And it was that delay that led Trump to run out the clock. So spare me the Merrick Garland, Joe Biden conspiracy theories here. Now, there was a lot of back and forth about the effort to bring the National Guard to Illinois and other places. This is Attorney General Bondi and Senator Durbin going back and forth on this. This is number 6. This is them debating.
The word is, and I think it's been confirmed by the White House, they are going to transfer Texas National Guard units to the state of Illinois. What's the rationale for that?
Yeah, Chairman, as you shut down the government, you voted to shut down the government, and you're sitting here, our law enforcement officers aren't being paid. They're out there working to protect you. I wish you loved Chicago as much as you hate President Trump. And currently, the National Guard are on the way to Chicago. If you're not going to protect your citizens, President Trump will.
Been on this committee for more than 20 years. That's the kind of testimony you expect from this administration. A simple question as to whether or not they had a legal rationale for deploying National Guard troops becomes grounds for a personal attack. I think it's a legitimate question. It's my responsibility. She refuses to answer as to whether she had any conversation with the White House about deploying national troops to my state.
It's true. She's just responding with political slogans. That's not a legal answer. I expect that from Stephen Miller. I don't expect that from the Attorney General. So disappointed. And again, I've talked about this before. I supported Pam Bondi because I thought she would be better than some of the other choices that the president was considering, like Matt Gaetz. But the truth is that they're in an impossible position, which is whoever gets the job won't be able to keep the job unless that person serves as President Trump's personal lawyer. Do I think Pam Bondi is better to be in that than Matt Gaetz? Yeah. But she has not shown any desire at this point to be independent and to inform the president when he is doing something or asking for something that crosses the line. Now, again, I have said that in states where the governor is welcoming the National Guard, whether it's a legitimate reason that they're using or not, I'm fine with it because as a legal matter, it's not a problem as far as I'm concerned. The legal problem is when the state's governor is not asking for it, and there is no justification. I mean, in none of these places is there a justification for the National Guard, meaning justification in the sense that to enforce the laws, things have gotten so bad that the local police can't do it. It's very insulting to the police. Now, people say, well, what about the ICE raids? And these are events that are being created by this administration to stir up and agitate. And then they're saying, look at the problem that exists that we created. So here is number 7. This is more of Senator Durbin and Bondi talking about the National Guard.
Your city has a murder rate 5 times higher than New York's. 571 homicides last year. If you were serious about protecting your people, you would be asking this administration for help. You're saying that we're coming into your state and your city. We're there to help make America safe and Illinois safe, whether or not you want to.
I believe cutting federal grant programs to law enforcement in my state and across the nation does not make us any safer, and you've done just that. You've supplanted that decision by sending in National Guard troops to California and other places. That is a situation where the governors have not asked for that help. If you truly wanted to do this on a bipartisan basis, you wouldn't defy a governor, you would work with them. I'm prepared to do that. I'm prepared to work with this administration.
Putting that aside, she can't claim she's ending weaponization and then all she does is make highly politicized comments. That is just not the role of the AG. You want to say that AGs aren't being forthcoming, and okay, but they shouldn't be sloganeers for the president. Now, here's Lindsey Graham with AG Bondi talking about this issue of the GOP senators, which I explained a moment ago, which was not accessing any content of what they said, was accessing times that certain calls were made the week of January 6th to create a timeline, as would be the case with any investigation. But obviously, this one is particularly sensitive. And obviously, it is sensitive when you're dealing with U.S. senators. But the overstatement coming from, oh, we're the victims, constantly the victims. But anyway, here is Senator Graham and AG Bondi. This is number 10.
You wonder why we're looking at Comey? Give me a break. Why are we looking at Comey? Because he ran an FBI and personally knew about exculpatory information and let it slide. How in the hell can two FBI agents interview a man who says the document you're using against a sitting president to suggest he may be a Russian agent or Carter Page that is now no longer reliable? How does that not get to the court? Can you tell me how that doesn't get to the court? You can't, can you?
I can't, Senator, and I
Can
can't
you tell me
discuss it.
why my phone records, when I'm the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, were sought by the Jack Smith agents? Why did they ask to know who I called and what I was doing from January 4th to the 7th? Can you tell me that?
No, Senator, and there were 8 senators in total.
Do you think that was an abuse of power?
Senator, I cannot discuss whether there is or is not an ongoing investigation.
I mean, she's becoming a joke. And it breaks my heart because I have always liked Pam Bondi. I've known her for years. She's truly becoming a joke, a dangerous joke. Getting new information right now about the Comey prosecution they were mentioning there. I mean, I love the fact that Lindsey Graham says, why wouldn't we be looking at? No one's talking about looking at him. We're talking about prosecuting him, indicting him, looking at. This is the bait and switch that they pull. They say, well, you know, it seems legitimate to look at this. Everyone's looked at this. John Durham looked at it. The Inspector General of the DOJ looked at it. The Senate Bipartisan Committee looked at it. The DOJ under Trump looked at it. This has been looked at again and again and again. And it was looked at by the U.S. attorneys in Virginia where this happened, and they determined there wasn't enough evidence. So now this is what they're doing. We're just getting this in. ABC News reporting the 2 prosecutors who normally practice in the Eastern District of North Carolina have entered their appearance in the Comey case. They're literally importing people. They had to find who are the most politicized prosecutors we can get who are actually willing to move forward with this case, this crappy case. Now, there's also been this allegation about $50,000 in cash with Tom Homan. And by the way, unlike many on the left, I don't necessarily think that there's a crime. I don't know. I mean, I know that it sounds kind of shady, but doesn't mean there was necessarily a crime that Tom Homan committed. And here is a back and forth. White House is a Democrat from Rhode Island, and this is number 11.
What became of the $50,000 in cash that the FBI paid to Mr. Homan in a paper bag, evidently?
Senator, as Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche recently stated, the investigation of Mr. Homan was subjected to a full review by the FBI, agents, and DOJ prosecutors. They found no credible evidence of any wrongdoing.
And that was not my question. My question was, what became of the $50,000 in cash that the FBI delivered, evidently in a paper bag, to Mr. Homan?
Senator, I'd look at your facts.
Are you saying that they did not deliver $50,000 in cash to Mr. Homan?
Senator, as recently stated, the investigation of Mr. Homan was subjected to a full
A
review
different question.
by the FBI agents,
That's a
by
different
Department
question.
of Justice prosecutors. They found no evidence of wrongdoing.
That's a different question. What became of the $50,000?
All right. She didn't answer it. And this is where White House really goes after Bondi on what the FBI found with regard to Trump and Jeffrey Epstein. This is number 13.
What's the
When
cost
you
of that?
and Patel came to office, you said you would look into this. There were hundreds of suspicious activity reports. Some people would deduce from the fact that they are called suspicious activity reports that there might be suspicious activity. And yet you seem to have looked at 0 of those suspicious activity reports involving Jeffrey Epstein accounts. Let me ask you something else. There's been public reporting that Jeffrey Epstein showed people photos of President Trump with half-naked young women. Do you know if the FBI found those photographs in their search of Jeffrey Epstein's safe or premises or otherwise? Have you seen any such thing?
You know, Senator Whitehouse, you sit here and make salacious remarks, once again trying to slander President Trump left and right, when you're the one who was taking money from one of Epstein's closest confidants, I believe, I could be wrong, correct me, Reid Hoffman, who was with Jeffrey Epstein on multiple occasions. And the senator sitting right next to you tried to block the flight logs from being released. Yet you're grilling me on President Trump and some photograph with Epstein? Come on.
The question is, did the FBI find those photographs that have been discussed publicly by a witness who claimed Jeffrey Epstein showed them to him? You don't know anything about that. Okay?
Look, whether that's, I don't know what the deal is. That does, I don't know, it feels cheap shoddy, but the idea that like the response is, oh, did you take money from an ally? I mean, did you take money from an ally of Jeffrey Epstein? Donald Trump was an ally of Jeffrey Epstein. It's like, come on. And here's some more. This is from Dick Durbin. This is number 15, where more questions about the Epstein client list claims. Let's listen.
In February, you made a public claim that the Epstein client list was, quote, sitting on my desk right now for review, end of quote. You then produced already public information and no client list at a major media event hosted at the White House. Attorney General Bondi, why did you publicly claim to have the Epstein client list waiting for your review and then produce nothing relevant to that claim?
Senator Durbin, if you listen to my entire clip on that, I said I had not reviewed it yet, that it was sitting on my desk along with the JFK files, the Martin Luther King files, and I said I had not yet reviewed it. And if you see our memo on Epstein, you will see, our memo on Epstein clearly points out that there was no client list, our July 6th memo. You also didn't let me respond to the HIDTA question. The budget transfers $196 million for high-intensity drug trafficking areas to the Office of Justice Programs, OJP. The Justice Department will continue to administer those grants under OJP in 2026.
Going back to the Epstein files, according to another whistleblower who made a protected disclosure to my office, you pushed the FBI to review approximately 100,000 Epstein-related records on an arbitrarily short deadline in March, and the FBI was directed to flag any documents that mentioned President Trump. Nothing came of that review until July when DOJ and FBI released an unsigned memo stating, quote, there's no incriminating client list. Why was the July 7th memo unsigned?
The July 7th memo came from the FBI and the Department of Justice. Director Patel answered those questions very clear. And, you know, Senator Durbin, I find it very interesting that you refused repeated Republican requests to release the Epstein flight logs in 2023 and 2024. You fought that. Did you take money from Reid Hoffman, campaign donations,
Never
who was
heard.
a huge Epstein friend?
So this is, she comes in with these talking points. And the problem is that, look, whoever's going to play dirtier is going to win in this situation, which is why, White House gets a little bit of points on playing dirty for mentioning supposedly half-naked photos. But all she's doing is playing dirty, right? Oh, what about this random dude who knew Epstein, who you gave money to? Look, it's a fair thing for her to say, you fought the disclosure, right? Okay. And I've criticized Democrats for suddenly being interested in the Epstein files in a way that they weren't before. But it has been Republicans who have been calling for the release. Democrats were relatively uninterested in it. Republicans were really interested in it until they realized that Donald Trump's name would come up. Let's play another contentious back and forth. And this is again about Comey's indictment. This is one of the things I'm particularly concerned about, is the pressure on the DOJ to bring this case against Comey. This is number 17, Senator Richard Blumenthal. Let's listen.
The night before James Comey's indictment, you had dinner with the President of the United States. Pretty intimate group.
Actually, there were a lot of people there that night. That's a great
James
picture.
Comey discussed at that dinner?
I love that picture. That's a great picture. And there were a lot of people there that night. I think the entire cabinet was there.
Did you discuss James Comey with the President of the United States? He was sitting just to your left.
Well, 2 seats down, yes. 2 seats down. And I am not going to discuss any
I'm gonna take
conversations
that
I've
as
had
a
or not
yes,
have with the
because
President
the
of the
American
United
public
States.
is entitled to know, Madam Attorney General.
The entire cabinet was at that dinner.
Whether you took
too,
instructions from President Trump after he told you very directly to indict James Comey, which is weaponization of the Department of Justice.
And then it got really ugly with Senator Blumenthal, apparently. This is play the next one. This is number 18.
I do have a question. In the merger that took place,
Which
that was
merger? You've
approved
listed many.
involving American Express GBT. I understand that Brian Ballard, longtime backer and head of the law firm where you worked, was instrumental in lobbying the Justice Department to drop that lawsuit. It was dismissed, so it's not subject to a court review. What conversations did you have with Mr. Ballard?
Senator Blumenthal, I cannot believe that you would accuse me of impropriety when you lied about your military service.
I am
you
not
lied.
asking
You
you-
admitted you
I am
lied
not
to be
accusing you
elected
of
a U.S. senator.
impropriety. I'm
You
asking
lied.
you
How
about
dare you? I'm a
conversations
career prosecutor.
with Mr.
Don't you
Ballard,
ever challenge my integrity.
had
I have
apparently-
abided by every ethics standard. Do not question my ability to be fair and impartial as Attorney General, and anything
You'll
with
answer that
my
question to
former
another of my
firm,
colleagues.
Ballard Partners.
Thank you.
Oh, spare me. Spare me. Again, this is coming from someone who has been a fan of hers, who has supported her nomination. Spare me the phony indignity. How dare? Of course your integrity is going to be questioned. This Comey indictment is ridiculous. Everyone knows it. When you listen to Republicans talking about it, they're not saying Comey ought to be indicted. They're going to get a conviction here. Of course they're not, because everyone knows that's not true. You hear Republicans talking about, well, the Russia investigation was opened and how he was out to get Trump and all this other nonsense that has nothing to do with the charge. Because, again, the thing he supposedly leaked was about the Hillary Clinton investigation. It makes no sense. And so they have every right to question her on this stuff. And here was Senator Blumenthal being asked by a reporter right outside after that happened, number 19.
Senator, can I ask you what you thought of the Attorney General's attacks on you?
She is attacking everyone. Her apparent strategy is to attack and conceal. Frankly, I've been through close to 15 of these Attorney General accountability hearings, and I have never seen anything close to it in terms of the combativeness, the evasiveness, and sometimes deceptiveness. I think it is possibly a new low for attorneys general testifying before the United States Congress. And I just hope my Republican colleagues will demand more accountability than we have seen so far.
I have to say, I really wish that were the case too. I really wish the non-culty MAGA Republicans would step forward and demand some accountability for this nonsense. And by the way, Tom Tillis was asking some, tough questions, Republican, but of course he's not running for re-election. So it's just crazy. I mean, Donald Trump has a literal stranglehold over the Republican Party to the point where, you go out of line and you're done. It's exactly what he wants, and he succeeds in that. And for those of us who are moderates, for those of us who like the conservative Democrats and the more liberal Republicans, this is very bad because it ensures there's no cooperation. It ensures that the most radical version of the Republican Party, and most importantly, of what Donald Trump wants personally, that's the part about it that I wish they were bothered by, that it's not even for party. I mean, this notion about the FBI being politicized, right? This whole thing about these Republican senators. Chris Wray's a Republican, a lifelong Republican, appointed by Donald Trump. And I get it. The MAGA folks make excuses, right? For anyone who doesn't sign on. Honest people like Chris Wray are now getting smeared. People like Chris Krebs, who had the nerve when serving in the Trump administration to say that the 2020 election was fair. So now he's getting investigated. This is nuts.
This is supposed to be an oversight hearing.
Oversight?
Excuse me, you can attack me after my time is over.
You've attacked all of us, including President Trump, for your entire career.
You can attack me later, and I know you've got plenty of canned attacks. We've heard them all day today.
Canned attacks on you?
This is supposed to be...
No one needs a canned attack on you.
Regular order, Madam Chair. I'm trying to speak. This is supposed to be an oversight hearing of the Justice Department. And it comes in the wake of an indictment called for by the president of one of his enemies. This is supposed to be an oversight hearing, and it comes in the wake of revelations that a top administration official took $50,000 in a bag, and this department made that investigation go away.
I've been very critical of AG Bondi recently, not in the past. Again, someone who supported her nomination, but I think she has been just serving at the pleasure of Donald Trump and doing whatever he tells her to do. And she's not supposed to be his personal lawyer. And there is simply no argument that somehow that's what Merrick Garland was for Joe Biden. And as I've explained before, the Biden Justice Department prosecuted and investigated more Democrats than Republicans. You think there's any chance that would happen in this administration? Any chance at all? Amy Klobuchar, Democrat from Minnesota, questioned Bondi about the prosecutions of Comey, and also I mentioned Chris Krebs a moment ago. He's being investigated as well. This is number 20.
We saw this with the president directing an investigation prosecution of Chris Krebs, the former head of cybersecurity, Lisa Cook, who is a current governor of the Federal Reserve, Director Comey. And the president, and I know you have said that you will not discuss discussions you've had with the president about Comey. Is that correct? That you won't testify here about that? Because I was going to ask you if you received advice, instruction, or request from anyone at the White House to direct the department to engage in any investigations, prosecutorial actions, including decisions not to investigate or prosecute anyone.
I'm not going to discuss any conversations.
But then how about the Truth Social post on September 20th, 2025, in which the president said, "We can't delay any longer, Pam," using your name, "not bringing criminal charges are killing our reputation," his words, "and credibility." And then goes on to tell you to prosecute a member of this committee, to prosecute the Attorney General of New York, and to prosecute James Comey. Do you consider that a directive to the Justice Department?
Senator Klobuchar, President Trump is the most transparent president in American history. And I don't think he said anything that he hasn't said for years.
And again, you just listen to her, and it's like, man, come on. President Trump is the greatest this and the most this and the business. It's like, stop. Can you imagine someone testifying about Obama? I mean, I won't even use Biden as an example because it becomes too far-fetched, the idea that Biden was the greatest or the most of almost anything, all right? Let's agree on that. But Obama, all right, that, President Obama is the most, it's like, it's so political. And that's not what the Attorney General is supposed to do. Again, there are other members of the administration. Caroline Leavitt can talk that way if she wants to, although you didn't hear the Biden press secretaries talking that way. But that's press secretary. It's different.